project, really, you can't control it. It starts and takes on a life of its own. You know, when you say recently, I mean as recent as December 2010, that was when we launched the River State Brand Project. That was December 1st, 2010. So that's why I say when you say recent, I don't know how recent, that's a year and a half, almost. But the point really was that Governor Amici, when he came on board, thought about the idea of changing perception. And you know, like they say, perception is everything. So every time we talked about Port-Harcourt or the Niger Delta, all people talked about everything you had were negative connotations. They would think about, first thing of course that everybody think about is militancy. The next thing they will think about is criminality. Now, interestingly, before the militancy toga, the oil companies pretty much, really in my view, as an escape route would say, oh, you know, Rivers people, they don't like to work hard, they don't like to work. All they like to do is to look good, but they're not willing to dirty their hands. And then you move from they don't want to work hard to a toga of, oh, they're militants, they're aggressive. Now, so how do you move from so much passivity and then suddenly to aggression and violence? But that was what Governor Amici inherited when he became governor. And it was clear to us that if we're going to move investments into River State, if we were going to get people to start associating the state with development, if we're going to kickstart the economy, then you had to do an entire branding project. You had to tell them the real story about what River State is. So in many cases, it was a destination brand. On the one hand, it was also to deal with the perceptions that existed. So, and then, you know, there was the whole idea of the greater Port-Harcourt city, which is really, well, and the fact that if we're going to build a new city, we needed to bring in people who would help us in building the city. So you would find that in our branding project, there is the emphasis on Port-Harcourt, you know, and that's not because every other part of River State doesn't matter, but because Port-Harcourt has always been the symbol. And even when you look at the triangle, what we call the Nigerian triangle, it's Lagos, Abuja, and Port-Harcourt. So you needed to also then, in the branding project, even though you were talking about the state, but you needed to talk about Port-Harcourt as a destination. Especially, like I said, we're doing the greater Port-Harcourt city. So Port-Harcourt became a key icon in our brand. So if you look at our logo, you would see Port-Harcourt River State. Yeah, this is one testimony. I mean, that, you see, the thing about branding is that it's you start with branding, but everybody else takes ownership of it. You know, when you have if you properly position a brand, it becomes everybody's baby. And so you're dealing with people saying this is our thing. You're reviving the sense of pride, the sense of purpose. Everybody is trying to then direct attention to it. That's part of what tells you it's become a successful brand. Now, interestingly, we've got many things that we're pulling together to reinforce the brand. For instance, you have the Port-Harcourt Boys song that was done by Duncan Mighty, and even though that was before we launched the brand, but you find that kind of reinforces, you know, the brand destination. So what are we doing? We're building on that to say, look, selling ourselves Port-Harcourt boy, Port-Harcourt girl, you know. And it reminds me of, my mom used to tell me a story in the 60s, you know, when they used to come from school and from Jos, when they're coming back from Jos on vacation, you know, to Port-Harcourt. every time you got when you got to Enugu, the Enugu people will get in, and the Port-Harcourt people, even from River State, and remember that Port-Harcourt is beyond being a biological reverse indigenous. The Port-Harcourt boys and girls stood out. So as they boarded the train, they knew, and they would just colonize one coach. So you know it was Port-Harcourt boys and girls. And in talking about Port-Harcourt, everybody who lived in Port-Harcourt was a Port-Harcourt boy. It didn't matter where you came from. Because Port-Harcourt, which is 100 years this year, by the way, Port-Harcourt was conceived by the whites to be a West African mega city. It was supposed to be a global city. Pretty much that was the way it was. So in building of Port-Harcourt, there were Ghanaians involved, there were Sierra Leoneans involved, and then there were Rivers people involved, Ikweres, Ijos, everybody was part of the Port-Harcourt project. Port-Harcourt is a city that was conceived to be a West African destination city, which was why the pidgin that was popular then was pretty much patois. That's when we grew up, that was actually the pidgin English some of us met. Where if a Port-Harcourt person spoke, they spoke almost like a Saron person. And it was in a sense very distinct from even the Warri pidgin, because the Port-Harcourt pidgin was, we like to say, was a little more refined. So when you entered the coach, the Port-Harcourt boys and girls stood out. Do you understand? And those are some of the things we're trying to bring back with the River State Brand Project, to say, listen, there are things that always defined Port-Harcourt. There are values that were part of this environment, and we need to kind of bring that back. And then there's an economy that had always existed. So that's really the whole point of the River State Brand Project. First of all is that we talked about why we're doing this brand thing, and I thought we said the whole point behind the branding project is the matter of dealing with perception. And how do you deal with perception? The only way to deal with perception is to replace stereotypes with realities. That doesn't happen in a day. And if you recall, I started my story by saying what the perception was, which was, like you said, there's oil and juice, they don't want to do anything. And we move from that into the era of, there's militancy, and then now, and you see, and the only way to tell your story is when you tell it to yourself. Whether you're dealing with the whole issue of north-south information flow and south-north information flow, or the matter, as in this case, of the perception of the Niger Delta region. One of the things we're able to show is a body of evidence that that region is not what people perceive it to be. You are one of the success stories, for instance, of that region. I am one of the success stories of that region. We have been able to compete and struggle without, and very often you find that success stories from the Niger Delta region are often people who have had no help along the way, which is in contrast indeed with what you find with young people from other regions. Very often young people from other regions have had some help along the way. So that's one of the ways to deal with it, to be able to show a body of evidence where the stories of success. We can beat our chest and show icons like Atidopi to side. Chairman of Stanbic IBTC, that's a success story. We can show a success story like Tonye Cole, CEO of Sahara Energy, and we can just go on and on and on. There are success stories from the region who have reached where they have reached by dint of hard work. We can show Echibike Amechi, who is doing amazing things in River State and generally turning, and who, quite honestly, when we talk about governance, has been, in my view, one of the most impactful governors in the country, because he had to build from almost ground zero. Or if you take the various governors in the various Niger Delta states, you cannot deny the fact that they're showing good work with the things they're doing. So quite honestly, it takes a body of evidence to begin to gradually deal with matters of perception. The idea really is to be able to tell our stories with a body of evidence so people can touch it, they can feel it, they can see it, and they can be a part of it. How much you followed, but if you followed, you'll find that Rivers State has been first. Governor Amechi is, I think, one of the hottest things on the lecture circuit globally, not just in Nigeria, not just in Rivers State. We're almost always getting senior, requests for lectures. Now that's one of the ways he's out there. He's talking about his state. He's showcasing his state. That's one of the ways. Now, we've been on several road shows. We just got back from the United States where we went for an agriculture summit by the Corporate Council on Africa. And rising from that meeting, the tractor company is coming to set up in Rivers State. So it is yielding results. People are beginning to hear the stories. People are beginning to see the state in a new light. People are beginning to talk with us, interface with us, and they're seeing the body of evidence that suggests to them things are changing in Rivers State. And the other thing is that your best ambassadors are those who've been here, done business, and gone back to say it's okay to do business there. That's happening more and more. It's not too long ago, I think sometime in March, I believe, Rivers State played host to over ambassadors from across the world. So gradually you're having that story changing. We're seeing more and more people coming in with investments. The Israelis are here to do the fish farm. The Mexicans are here. The Americans are coming in with this tractor company. The British are here. So the Germans are here with the syringe factory. And there is actually, in a manner of speaking, a rush for the black gold. So I think that we're seeing gains from telling our story ourselves. We're seeing such gains. And I think that, the thing about the brand is that it takes a life of its own. The branding starts, I'll tell you for instance, before we launched the Rivers State brand December 1, nobody was talking about change, you can see. Nobody talked about it. One of the benefits of the brand is that it caught on like wildfire. And everywhere you go, you hear people say, change you can see. Right? That's the whole idea. That's the benefit of the brand project. And everywhere you go, people say, oh, change you can see. That's the benefit. And the funny thing, it caught on so much that even at the national level, it became people's campaign slogan. You found that other people were, locking onto the change story. Rivers State had popularized the change story. It's like Obama's Yes We Can. Right? It starts out as being yours. It goes out of your hands. That's what a good brand project does. You start it, but it gets out of your hands. You're no longer in control of it. We started the branding project. Everybody talks about, change you can see, change you can see, change you can see. And as part of it, we started the Rivers State Open for Business series. And everybody is now saying, we're open. I was at the South Summit and they were discussing from change you can see to we're open for business to possibilities, and that's it. So that's the thing about a brand project. Rivers State is open for possibilities. That's our tagline. And gradually you're going to find that will key in. People are beginning to use it now and again. So with a brand project, really, you can't control it. It starts and takes on a life of its own.